So as we kind of saw in the last ecosystem, the Exchange and Outlook ecosystem is a pretty large one. It's a huge percentage of the market. And now, you're sort of confronting one of the initial challenges or the big challenges that we startups all have, which is distribution. So that's really awesome that you're working into that space. But one of the other challenges is, of course, if you have that channel, how do you actually get it to work? How do you get the installations to work? So for the first time, not only is there the distribution side of it, but there's some real advancements both in terms of on the hosted side for Microsoft and in terms of companies like Context.io and actually my company that are helping with actually talking to Exchange. So that's pretty awesome. And as I mentioned before, Jason he's the lead program manager for Microsoft Exchange. And Bruno is the founder of a company called Context.io, which if those of you that were here last year, it was announced that they were acquired by Return Path. And Context.io, if you're not familiar, it's an API for email, which not only makes it easier to talk to IMAP, but to pull meaningful insight out of your email, like we talked about earlier, such as their most common contacts or your list of attachments if you want to have sort of a unique identifier that will always point to that attachment. And one of the things that they're also working on, which we'll talk about today, is Microsoft Exchange. So I'd like to start by just asking, I guess I'm not going to listen to you, Jason, on this one. Why is it important to talk to Microsoft Exchange, Bruno?
Microsoft Exchange is a huge part of email accounts. A lot of applications start targeting Gmail, Google Apps people, and then they expand to other IMAP providers that are having all their quirks. But then, especially for business-minded applications, you quickly get to a point where you get tons of Exchange users going to your app and saying, can I use your application? I'm using Exchange. And the answer is oftentimes no. So a lot of applications built on Context.io, that's a top request we get a lot. Like, when are you guys going to support Exchange? We support it if IMAP is turned on, but Exchange, by default, IMAP is not turned on. So supporting it natively is something I've been saying it's coming in 6 months for like 2 years. But I think it's going to come before Outlook gets a modern HTML rendering engine. So we're poking fun at Microsoft. But no, Exchange is a huge part of the email ecosystem. So supporting it for your app, especially if you want to start monetizing in a business environment, it's just, you can't not do it.
Jason, can you speak at all to some of the numbers in terms of do you have any idea what percentage of the market Exchange is roughly?
It was pulling teeth for me to be able to publicly talk about any numbers the way they come. But the one I put up there, I think, is the best one. The 78% of all companies in this Forrester survey, recent Forrester survey was last month, support Outlook and Exchange, and I think that's pretty representative of other numbers that I've seen in other polls. So it's significant.
So the fact that 3 out of 4 business users are using Exchange means that it would be a good idea to support them if you can. So it's sort of compelling. Now, along with getting access to the so just to be clear, by the way, one of the main issues with talking to Exchange is that there are all these different configuration issues. And I know, Bruno, that's one of the things you're addressing. But along with that, there's another change that's happening. And it's a trend that's taking place with Office 365. How is Office 365 affecting the ability for people to talk to Microsoft Exchange for developers?
Yeah, so as I said earlier, that's the thing I'm most excited about for you guys. It makes your job a lot easier because you've now got a single service that is now being versioned consistently across the world. That's what the majority of Exchange users, we expect over the next several years will be on the Office 365 service. So it now means you can really target in a very consistent way, and we can develop a developer experience that's modern and moving with the industry. We always laugh that our biggest competition for Exchange is with our Exchange 2003 customers. Our biggest challenge with Exchange 2003 is actually people look at that and say that's the state of the art of what Exchange supports because they don't see the great experiences in Exchange 2013. They're just they're locked in the year 2003. And so I think we're really excited that actually now the majority of customers are going to be moving with us and see the kind of the latest and greatest. So things like there is one endpoint, Outlook.com, now confusingly, Outlook.com, but there's one endpoint now where you can actually access all the Office 365 users. In a single place, which you could never do before. You had to use Auto-Discover and a bunch of other things, which Bruno and Jared did a great job abstracting, but we actually hope to make that a lot easier and a lot easier for them to abstract if there's still that need there, which we hope it becomes significantly reduced.
So to get at that last point, I mean, for those of you that access Gmail, what's the IMAP server for Gmail? Anybody? imap.gmail.com, not the hardest thing in the world to figure out, but it used to be, even with Office 365 and Former and other Exchange Online services, it'd be like, blah blah 2164.blah.com or serverdata.com. Whereas now, it's now one URL. So that's a huge part of it, is users don't know whatever that obfuscated URL was. So that's one big piece of it. What are some of the other things that are different in talking to Exchange than it is in talking to Gmail? Maybe Bruno.
I think what you just said is definitely one. I mean, I think there's three big differences. I mean, the protocol itself, Exchange Web Services, is very, very different than IMAP. I mean, IMAP is you open a socket and there's all that networking exchange, and Exchange Web Services is SOAP-based. So you make HTTP calls, you get XML back, and there's the thinking is very different. So you have to really learn a different protocol. And then there's how that protocol differs from 2007, 2010, 2013, what's available, what's not in some. And then even then, once you got that settled, is all those installs. Because yes, 1 out of 4 is Office 365, but those 3 other users could be anything. and that's a huge challenge beyond the protocols. How can you get into that account? Is it behind a VPN? Is the auto-discover at a standard place? Is the provider blocking every single client other than the official Microsoft clients or these official mail app clients? So there's tons of cases that you try to abstract as much as possible, that are extremely hard and painful to deal with.
So Jason, is it that bad, or are things? It's true that the Exchange Web Services has more features that are available with each of the newer versions, but in terms of some of the more basic, general mail reading activities, how different are those between the versions?
Yeah. So I think we really started focusing on our web services in Exchange 2007, and really with Exchange 2007 SP1, that was where we actually reached a great set of breadth and depth in our APIs, so much so that the Mac Mail guys and the Mac Outlook guys wrote on that protocol, and that one has been maintained as is for the last, 7 years. So I think when you look in the whole API, the ecosystem, having the same API for 7 years is a pretty amazing thing, for a web service API. And so, you target that API, that's going to do what I would say pretty much everybody I've talked to today has got that core set of functionality they want to do. You can target that API, and you can get that across this huge breadth of the Exchange install base. I will say there's a couple of things in the conversations today that have come up. I think Bruno knows, but IMAP is something that most Exchange customers don't have on because they have no need for it. IMAP is really a legacy kind of lowest common denominator protocol, and not a great developer protocol. I mean, we use it because it's there, but not because we think it's a great developer protocol. I've heard that time and again as people have talked about how inefficient it is and how much resources. And so our Exchange Web Services really were built as an API where you could develop against great third-party apps, as well as build these rich applications against, and have something that was stable across different versions. We really value that because we know that API churn for companies, difficult to manage that frequently changing.
Just the way notifications are done on Exchange. I mean, there's push
Yep.
and pull notifications. It's much cleaner and elegant for an application than keeping an idle socket on every account is. And there's also some sync calls you can do in some folders. So instead of trying to IMAP figure out the list, you can do a sync or a log of changes that happen in that given service. So it's much easier to keep track of your side with what's happening on the server.
Yeah, I think that's one thing I wanted to, I think important to talk about too, is that, you're going to need to use Exchange Web Services to talk to Exchange. Please don't, and I know there are some people who make a business around making it look like an IMAP interface, but the reason we went the Exchange Web Services route is to provide those richer web services is because kind of the core value prop of Exchange and Outlook is mail, calendar, contacts, tasks, all together, all kind of aware of each other. And that's the value you get with using web services. And the experiences that you can build on top of those are much, much richer than the experiences you can build on top of IMAP. Because you don't have access to all those different data types and all the properties on the message. And so that's where, as much as I love that people like Bruno are helping kind of expand access to Exchange with making it kind of making all these data types, all these sources look the same. At the same time, it pains me because we really want that differentiated functionality in Exchange to really shine, and for I think for a lot of your scenarios to really pop with end users, they expect that richer kind of integration because they live in that in Outlook today.
And it depends on what type of product you're building.
Absolutely.
So for your product, what is specifically what you guys will be supporting, Bruno?
Well, the Exchange first will be on a version of DPI that is yet to be publicly released. That's called Context IO Lite. That's basically targeting use cases where latency between what's on the server and what you get in API responses is basically zero. So we aim to support the same functionality we support in IMAP. IMAP is definitely, I do agree that it's not a great developer protocol. And when we designed Context IO, we thought not of email clients, but of all applications where email data is relevant. And how do we make them not have to learn about IMAP? So all the contacts resources, the files resources, figure out threads, webhooks, make it very easy to get a notification. So these are all things we want to make sure work as well on Exchange as they do on IMAP. And when there's special things about Exchange, such as like message categories, for example, which are like in addition to in which folder they are, there's categories you can assign. So these are definitely things we'd like to surface up because they could be useful for developers.
Sure. And just as some context, if you are looking to build across platforms and you haven't started, Context.io is a great platform for it. If you're looking to build either just for Exchange or if you're looking to go within deeply in Exchange, we have a product that's in that space just for talking on this, just if you wanted to install something that will help you to connect to Exchange. So if you have challenges on that side of it, that's where
I think someone building an application that's really tailored at installing in a corporation, getting every single person in that corporation working on it, and there's only one Exchange server. I mean, using Exchange Web Services.
Oh, you don't need anything
natively,
special for that.
Yeah, exactly. I
mean,
mean, there's no very big value in having us in the middle.
Yeah.
But if you're an application that just doesn't want to care about whether your user is a Gmail account, a Yahoo account, an AOL, or an Exchange, then you just code once against a quite modern API, and you don't need to worry about it.
Yeah. And I should also bring up another thing. How many of you are familiar with Exchange service accounts? Anybody? Okay, so just a few. Jason, can you talk about what those are and why we?
Yeah, absolutely. So that's, I think, again, one of the biggest kind of hurdles to get over when I think a lot of small companies kind of the first thing they think about is how do I want to get that viral adoption, get that end user motion going. We just try it, just sign up for it and try it. And so they usually start harvesting username, password, or using single user OAuth. I think the thing that they actually really need to think about is how does that motion switch from single user access to now I actually want to go and engage the decision maker at a company and actually sell my solution to them. And the minute you do that, your authentication model changes because nobody wants you to be going in and using end user credentials to go access data. And so the way that we support this today in Exchange, we have this concept we call application impersonation, which allows you to create an administrator to create a role on a per application basis and assign that application scope over a set of users, and then allows your application to then to access the mailbox under that user scope. And so that's a concept that is really important for those of you who are thinking of targeting enterprises, and specifically a motion where you actually go and talk to the IT department. This is something we support on-premise with Exchange 2010 and later, as well as Office 365. And this is a place that we're going to continue and innovate along with making this easier and easier. But the goal, the really thing to understand there is a distinct difference between the end user and the service pattern. And the other thing about once you go that route of using a application impersonation route, we start letting you do things like aggregating notifications so that you're not getting a notification ping, a heartbeat for every user, but per aggregated group of users, which really reduces the overhead that you've got to spend. And so that's again stuff that's not available in IMAP, only available in our web services, and only available on these more organization-centric authentication methods.
So we have time for just one question. Does anybody have any questions about Microsoft Exchange they'd like to bring up? Anybody? Go for it.
Hi there, Ben from Yahoo. Just one of the frustrations we have with Exchange is like the licensing around things like Exchange ActiveSync.
Yeah.
So do you foresee in the future maybe that will be like dropped or embrace open standards like CalDAV or CarDAV?
Yeah. Today, I mean, you're right. So we've got, to be clear, Exchange is asking about Exchange ActiveSync and the licensing model for that. Exchange ActiveSync is a licensed protocol. There is a fee. It's a pretty nominal fee now. It's dropped significantly over the years. It's still there. No, I don't have any, no, I haven't heard of any plans to drop that. I think there's all the patents involved in that. That's kind of where it is. Exchange Web Services, completely unpatented, or not unpatented, completely doesn't require a license, no licensing fee, completely free to use. We really want to, incent the developer ecosystem around that. And that's why, there's a place for ActiveSync around specifically mobile devices accessing directly the Exchange in patterns that are very similar to existing mail clients. That protocol, again, is not really built for third-party extensions of the protocol or extensions of the application flow. You can't get at things like custom properties. Exchange Web Services is clearly around that developer extending our base data types and adding additional functionality to them. So it's a decision point you have to make. And I recommend, in general, most people go to Exchange Web Services unless it really looks almost exactly like a mail client, then in which case you may want to look at licensing ActiveSync. Yep.
All right, so Exchange is...
He was waiting from the last time. So
all right. We should let him
Thank
go
you.
for it.
My question is about Office apps.
Yeah.
For payment, is there a fee system like monthly payment and something like that? Or
I'm sorry, is there a fee system like?
fee system like a monthly payment or something like that?
There is a subscription,
Okay.
yes, and there's a subscription which you can say, I want a monthly rate of $2, per user per
No, but
month.
are you talking about the developer has to pay? Or are you talking about whether...
The user, yeah.
Oh, well, yeah.
Yeah, there's a subscription model for the user where they can pay on a monthly basis, yes. Yep.
Yeah, in your billing system, that's
Yep.
great. Okay, well, thank you very much to our two panelists, Bruno and Jason.